Welcome. Today we're exploring Nassim Nicholas Taleb's idea of the Black Swan. It's fascinating, isn't it, how much we humans love to predict things.
Oh, absolutely. That urge to know what's coming next, that little thrill when you guess right.
Yeah, that I knew it feeling. We're always studying the past, looking at data, trying to connect the dots, assuming we can map out the future.
It seems like a pretty sensible approach, really. You gather what you know, you
Yeah.
analyze it, and you project forward. It's all based on, well, what we know.
But that fundamental reliance on what we know,
Yeah.
that's exactly what Nassim Nicholas Taleb takes issue with in his book, The Black Swan.
Right.
This exploration today might really shift how you think about predictability, because Taleb's point is that the truly massive shifts, the game changers, they don't come from our knowns. They come from the unknowns.
And he kicks things off with this great historical story, which seems simple, but really sets the stage. Yeah. Picture this. It's 1697. There's a Dutch explorer in Western Australia, totally unfamiliar territory. And he sees something that, well, no European had ever seen before. A black swan.
Wow, I mean, you have to imagine the shock, because for centuries, literally centuries, everyone in Europe knew that all swans were white. It was just an accepted fact.
Exact. Black swan was basically shorthand for impossible. And then, boom, one sighting.
And it wasn't just a minor detail, was it?
Not at all. That single bird, that one observation completely outside their known experience, it shattered a deeply held belief. It showed how just one unexpected thing can force us to rethink everything.
And that simple story, that's the essence of the book, really.
That's the core idea Taleb builds on.
So why should you, listening right now, care about this? Well, understanding this Black Swan idea is, I think, incredibly important for anyone thinking about the future.
Yeah, whether it's your personal life, your finances, or just trying to understand what's happening in the world.
It forces you to look beyond what seems obvious, beyond the patterns you think you see.
Which brings us to the big question. If these events are so impactful, why are we so bad at seeing them coming? Our usual method, like you said, is to study history, crunch the numbers, get expert opinions.
Right, gather all the knowns, build a model, make a prediction based on that. This is the most likely outcome based on the data.
We put a lot of faith in those models and analyses.
So if that's our standard approach, studying the knowns, where does Taleb argue it goes wrong? What's his counter?
His core argument is that the events that truly reshape things, our lives, the economy, society, they don't arise from simply extending the trend lines of what we already know. They come from the unknowns. Things so far outside our current data, our models, even sometimes our imagination, that we just don't see them coming. We lack the framework to even conceive of them beforehand.
That almost feels wrong, doesn't it? We're taught to rely on evidence and experience.
It is counterintuitive. And Taleb uses this really vivid analogy to drive it home. Often it's a turkey, but let's use a sheep.
Okay, a sheep.
So imagine this sheep. Every single day, the farmer feeds it, gives it water, keeps it safe. Day after day, the same routine.
The sheep's data is looking pretty good. Consistent care, reliable food source.
Exactly. Its entire experience confirms the farmer's kindness. Its prediction for tomorrow, based on overwhelming past evidence, is more food, more care, confidence level, 100%.
Makes sense from the sheep's perspective.
And then one day, maybe it's Eid, maybe it's Christmas, doesn't matter the specific day, the farmer comes out and cut out. Well, it's not for feeding time. The farmer slaughters the sheep.
Oh, right. That's stark.
For the sheep, it's not just bad luck. It's a complete catastrophic invalidation of its entire predictive model, built on mountains of past data. It's the ultimate black swan.
It came completely out of the blue from its point of view. Totally unpredictable based on its known world.
Precisely. It highlights how dangerous it can be to assume future stability just based on past observations. Our knowns can build a very convincing but ultimately false sense of security.
That analogy really clarifies it. Our models, based only on what we've seen, are blind to those radical breaks from the past.
So building on that, Taleb lays out three key characteristics that define a black swan event. First, he says it's an outlier, something totally outside the realm of regular expectations.
Meaning it's not just unlikely, it's unprecedented.
Exactly. Unprecedented rarity. We might plan for worst-case scenarios based on history, right? Like the worst flood on record or the biggest market drop we've seen.
Yeah.
But a true black swan is something history didn't prepare us for.
Yeah.
It falls outside even those known worst cases.
So it's something fundamentally new in its nature or scale.
Yes. Second characteristic, it carries extreme impact. Its consequences are massive, disproportionate.
Like it doesn't just cause ripples, it causes a tidal wave.
Precisely. Taleb uses the phrase impact impossible, suggesting the sheer scale of its effects was unimaginable beforehand. It hits, and suddenly the whole landscape changes, often reveals hidden fragilities in systems we thought were solid.
Okay, so rare, massive impact. And the third one is the one I find really intriguing, this idea of retrospective predictability.
Ah, yes, the hindsight bias. This is crucial. After the Black Swan hits, after the unthinkable happens.
Suddenly, everyone can explain it.
Exactly. Experts pop up, analysts write reports, everyone connects the dots backwards, and it starts to seem logical, even obvious in retrospect. Oh, well, of course that was going to happen because of A, B, and C.
I've definitely done that, looked back at some huge event and thought the signs were all there, even though I totally missed them at the time.
We all do. And Taleb throws down that challenge. If you saw it coming, why didn't you shout it from the rooftops before it happened? It really exposes how we build these comforting narratives after the fact.
So the reasons become clear only after the event, but were effectively invisible beforehand. Rarity, extreme impact, and that illusion of predictability and hindsight. Those are the three markers.
That's the trifecta. And constructing those neat post-event stories actually makes us less prepared for the next unknown.
And once you have this framework, you start seeing potential black swans or acknowledged ones in history, like the 9/11 attack.
A classic example Taleb uses. While, yes, there were background geopolitical tensions, the specific method, the scale, the coordinated nature of that day, and its immediate global impact.
It was outside the predictive models of the time, completely shifted global security, politics, travel, everything.
Absolutely. Or think about World War I. Tensions were high, sure, but the way it spiraled into this unprecedented, devastating global conflict, shattering empires. Few truly predicted that specific outcome or its sheer scale.
Right. Many thought it would be a short, contained war. It was a fundamental break. And again, afterwards, countless books explaining exactly why it was inevitable.
Exactly. These weren't just big events. They defied the predictive logic of their era.
And the really important point here is this isn't just about history books or global finance. Taleb stresses this applies everywhere.
Politics, technology.
And crucially, right down to our personal lives. I mean, just take a second. Think about your own life. The major turning points.
Yeah.
Getting that one specific job, meeting a certain person, moving somewhere unexpectedly. How predictable were those moments before they happened?
Often not very predictable at all, right? The biggest shifts might have come from a chance encounter, a sudden opportunity, or even a crisis that forced a change you never planned.
They often come from those unknowns we were talking about, not a neat linear plan playing out.
And this connects directly to things like financial markets, too. It challenges that simple idea that success is always just a straight line upwards based on skill and effort.
You mean like the idea that if you just work hard consistently, you'll get predictably proportional results?
Yeah, Taleb argues the free market doesn't really work like that. Not entirely. It actually allows for, even thrives on, luck specifically, positive black swans.
Like the J.K. Rowling example he uses.
Exactly. Her success with Harry Potter wasn't just good writing leads to good sales. It was a global phenomenon on a scale that was completely off the charts, totally unpredictable. A positive black swan that skewed everything.
Or think about wealth concentration. Someone like Elon Musk, that level of wealth isn't just the top end of a normal distribution. It's an extreme outlier.
Right. These extremes, both positive and negative, demonstrate that breakthroughs, or collapses, often come from these unpredictable black swan forces. Not just steady progress. They live in the tails of the probability curve.
Okay, so if these events are real and hugely impactful, why don't we see them? Why do we keep getting blindsided?
Well, Taleb argues it's partly baked into how our minds work. We have these cognitive biases. One of the biggest culprits is confirmation bias.
Yes. We tend to look for evidence that confirms what we already believe.
Precisely. Our subconscious filters information. We actively seek out data that supports our existing views and tend to ignore, dismiss, or subtly reinterpret anything that contradicts them.
So back to the swans. If I believe all swans are white, I'll keep noticing white swans. They reinforce my belief. If someone mentions a black swan, I might think they're mistaken or lying.
Or even if you see a black one, your brain might try to explain it away. Oh, it must be a goose, or it's covered in mud. Anything to protect the existing belief.
That makes us really vulnerable when reality doesn't match our beliefs.
Hugely vulnerable. It leads to that shock when the undeniable black swan finally appears. And related to this is another bias Taleb calls the narrative fallacy.
Okay, feel that.
It's our deep-seated need to turn everything into a coherent story. We like explanations, clear cause and effect chains. We look back at history or even our own lives and create a smooth narrative.
This happened, which led to that, which then caused this, like telling the story of a successful company as this logical step-by-step progression.
Exactly. We smooth out the randomness, the lucky breaks, the dead ends, the sheer uncertainty of the time. We create a story that makes sense now.
But Black Swans don't fit neatly into those simple stories, do they?
Not at all. They represent radical discontinuities.
Yeah.
Sudden jumps. Complex, unforeseen consequences. Real life is messy and nonlinear, but our narrative bias pushes us towards neat, linear explanations, blinding us to the possibility of abrupt, game-changing shifts.
This makes me think about that distinction Taleb makes. Mediocristan versus extremistan. That seems key to understanding where these black swans actually live.
It's a really useful framework. He contrasts these two imagined domains. Mediocristan is the land of the average, the predictable.
Like human height, maybe?
Perfect example. You get variation, sure. Some people are tall, some short, but it's all clustered around an average. You're never going to meet someone 100 feet tall.
Right. One single person's height doesn't drastically change the average human height.
Exactly. In Mediocristan, averages work well, standard deviations mean something, predictions are relatively safe, things are constrained.
But then there's extremistan.
And Taleb argues this is where many of the most important aspects of our world reside. Finance, wealth, fame, book sales, market crashes, technological impact.
And in extremistan?
In extremistan, a single observation, a single event or individual can have a massive, disproportionate impact that throws all the averages out the window.
Like the J.K. Rowling example again. Her sales figures aren't just a bit above average. They dwarf thousands of other authors combined.
Precisely. Or one market crash wipes out games that took years to build. Or one invention changes everything. In extremistan, the outlier isn't just an anomaly. It can dominate the entire system.
So extremistan is the natural habitat of the black swan.
That's where they thrive. Because the potential for extreme, unpredictable deviation is built into the very nature of the system. The danger, Taleb warns, is using tools and mindsets developed for mediocristan, like relying heavily on past averages, to try and navigate extremistan.
That leads to a false sense of security and massive underestimation of risk. You're basically assuming you won't meet a 100-foot person when, in extremistan, metaphorically speaking, you just might. Okay, so this is all quite humbling, maybe even a bit unsettling. If the world is full of these unpredictable black swans, and we're biased against seeing them, what do? We still have to make decisions, plan for the future, right? We can't just freeze.
Absolutely. Prediction, or at least projection, is necessary for survival. Planning finances, ensuring safety, it requires assumptions about tomorrow.
So given that predicting the big stuff is maybe impossible, or at least incredibly hard, but we still need to act, how do we navigate this?
This is where Taleb offers some really practical, grounding advice. He doesn't claim to have a crystal ball, but he offers a powerful heuristic, especially explored in his later book, Skin in the Game.
Skin in the game. Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It's basically a filter for whose advice or predictions you should actually pay attention to. The core idea is only trust people who bear the direct consequences of their own advice or actions. They need to have something personal at stake.
Okay, so they stand to lose if they're wrong.
Exactly. Think about that asymmetry of risk. A pilot has skin in the game. If they mess up, they go down with the plane. Their incentives are aligned with their passengers' safety.
Makes sense. Their advice about flying carries weight because they live the consequences.
But Taleb points out a huge problem in the modern world. Many people who wield influence, make predictions, or give advice have no skin in the game.
Like who?
Well, think about, say, financial pundits on TV who recommend stocks but don't actually invest their own money according to those recommendations. Or academics whose complex theories might influence policy, but who face no personal downside if those theories prove disastrous in practice.
Or politicians advocating for policies whose negative consequences they might be completely insulated from.
Right. They get the upside, fame, fees, power, if things go right. But if their advice leads to a black swan event for others, they often walk away unscathed. There's no feedback loop of consequence for them.
So the practical takeaway is, be skeptical of advice from people who aren't exposed to the potential downsides of that advice.
That's the litmus test. Does this person truly believe what they're saying enough to put their own resources, reputation, or well-being on the line? Are they eating their own cooking, so to speak?
If not, maybe their pronouncements are just talk. cheap talk, potentially dangerous talk.
It's about aligning incentives and consequences. If someone has skin in the game, their perspective, while not infallible, carries a different kind of weight. It suggests genuine conviction backed by personal risk.
That's a really powerful filter to apply when you're trying to decide who to listen to in this uncertain world. And while we focused on the Black Swan today, Taleb does explore how to become more robust, even benefit from shocks, in his book Anti-Fragile.
Yeah, that's a whole other fascinating area, moving beyond just resilience to actually gaining from volatility and randomness. But definitely a topic for another time.
For sure. So maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. In a world clearly shaped by these unseen, unpredictable black swans, maybe true wisdom isn't really about getting better at predicting the future.
Maybe it's more about building resilience, being prepared for surprises, both good and bad, and crucially, being very discerning about whose advice you follow.
Asking yourself constantly, does this person have skin in the game? How might you apply that filter in your own life when making decisions or evaluating information? Something to think about.
Definitely food for thought.